They can call me all they want. It's not going to help. I'm doing the right thing, and it's not good for me, believe me.
That President Trump earlier this week talking about the tax plan that he's just announced. Administration, they're selling it as a tax break for the middle class, but here's the president's top economic advisor, Stevie Cohen, struggling to answer a question about that very issue. Here's the secretary as well as also George Stephanopoulos.
There will be middle-class families who get a tax increase under your plan, correct?
George, there's an exception to every rule.
So that's a yes.
So look, I can't guarantee anything.
Okay, so here at least are the details we do know about the plan. It will slash the corporate tax rate from 35% to 20%. It will reduce the number of tax brackets from 7 to just 3, potentially 4, and it drops the rate on the top bracket by nearly 5%. It also would eliminate the estate tax for wealthy people who individually would be getting $5.5 million or more, or even $11 million for a couple. It also would repeal the alternative minimum tax, or AMT. We're going to have more on that in a minute. And it also allows individuals to funnel certain types of income into business income that would then be taxed at a lower rate. Now, a lot of this stuff would, in fact, give the president and his family a really big tax cut. Now, according to an analysis by the New York Times, the commander-in-chief could save more than $1 billion, and that's with a B. Now, shelving the estate tax for big fortunes, obviously, it would benefit the president's kids. Ditching the AMT, it would save Trump tens of millions of dollars while he's alive. So would dropping the top tax rate and declaring more income in the business category at its lowest rate. Let's bring in our guest here, Rick Ungar. He's going to help us sort it all out. He's host of Steele and Ungar on Sirius XM POTUS channel and a senior contributor at Forbes.com. Rick, thank you as always for the time.
Always a pleasure.
All right, let's break it into pieces. First of all, the AMT, the alternative minimum tax. You know, when the Times got their hands on the only tax return we've seen for a single year, he wasn't paying much in anything of taxes. The only taxes he was really paying was the AMT. So with little that he's paying, and there's no reason to think that one return is irregular compared to past and future returns, this actually would get rid of the one thing that makes him pay any income tax.
You're exactly right. Trump ended up paying 33 million more in taxes in that 1 year that we've seen because of the AMT. Now, because inflation was never considered when the AMT was created, it has crept down into some income brackets that were not intended. How do you fix that? You fix the AMT so that it continues to apply to who the intent was, which are very wealthy people.
And I even think the corporate tax rate, there's a logic to reduce it from 35%. But the point that the president goes into detail is that, hey, this isn't going to help guys like me. Wait a second. He's also changing, isn't he, about pass-through business income that now is going to be taxed at a lower rate again, and that directly is for guys like Trump.
I don't mind lowering the corporate tax rate from 35% to 20% if you make it a minimum effective tax rate of 20%. Now you've got a fair situation where big corporations and small businesses are paying the same. The pass-through thing, you can find some businesses that are not doing as well on the pass-through and could benefit if they change the rate to 25%. However, let's keep in mind that the average income of somebody who was benefiting from the pass-through, typically a fund manager, the average income of those people is $750,000 a year. Not exactly the small business people that the president says he's trying to help.
And that same argument that I'm looking out for the guy running the mom and pop store, I hear all the time when it comes to the estate tax. But the dirty secret is, and there's no even debate about this, you're not paying a penny in tax unless you're inheriting as an individual $5.5 million or as a couple $11 million. To that end, Rick, I've heard this many times. Donald Trump certainly has not been the first president who's proposed this, but it's a lot of money that we'd lose in revenue if all of a sudden for the wealthiest half of 1%, you're saying no more tax on what you inherit.
Another situation where you can find a situation where it does need to be fixed. It wasn't an accident that the president chose to go to Indiana. He went there on purpose. Why? Because there are farmers there. And there have been farmers who have been hurt by the estate tax. How do you fix that? You make an exemption to the estate tax for people who are affected in that way. Make that exemption for farmers who are suffering under this. That doesn't mean you get rid of it for everybody. In fact, if we believe Mr. Trump, who puts his own net worth at something around $8 billion, that means that it would be a $4 billion savings.
To that end, where he called this a miracle for the middle class,
Democrats and Republicans in Congress should come together, finally, to deliver this giant win for the American people and begin middle-class miracle.
not if you're in New York and not if you're in a bunch of blue states. To me, and I think we're going to see more and more in this in terms of proposed legislation, it's not just pick an economic class against another. It's picking a state, whether it's Democrat or Republican. In this particular case, New Yorkers, and you heard it in that interview with Steve Cohen, he can't make a commitment that New Yorkers, for example, won't actually have their taxes go up in there in the middle class. And that's because if you're a high tax state here and you're paying a lot, whether it be state or property tax, et cetera, you can't count that as a deduction anymore in this proposal.
I've never seen a tax proposal of any substance that didn't have a tax table attached to it. We've got these three supposed cutoff points, but we have no idea what income it applies to. Is it 25% if you make this much or this much? We have no idea. So you start with that, you can't answer any questions. Yes, you live in California or New York. I happen to live in both, and you're paying state and local taxes there. You lose that deduction, it's going to be really, really hard to make the case that you as a middle-class American are going to be paying less in taxes.
Finally, Rick, a political question in terms of the reaction to this. It's been somewhat muted, I thought, from folks who always talk about fiscal responsibility and pay-go and that, you have to have an offset for every dollar that you lose, and you'd lose a whole lot of billion in revenue with this kind of a plan. To that point, do you think he's going to get attacked from this on both sides, not just Democrats, but people in those blue states, and moreover, the really arch conservatives who say, wait a minute, you're cutting all this money coming in, what programs are you going to cut to pay for it? Will that be coming, or does the Republicans swallow hard and go along?
You have the deficit hawks, the Republicans, the conservatives. They're in power, both in Congress and in the White House, and they're being very quiet. I mean, they're saying, who cares about the deficit? Who cares? What matters is that we stimulate economic growth. But they've gone away. I think you're going to be surprised. I think you're going to see those who you identify as deficit hawks, those in the Freedom Caucus in the House, they're going to be very quiet about it.
Well, we shall see, and also we'll see if we get some more details about this. Rick, as always, I certainly appreciate the time. Thank you.
Good to be with you, Rick.
You as well. All right, coming up next, everybody, another installment in our series where we look at people who are working hard but still just can't get ahead. They're sometimes the forgotten members of our society, caught between the middle class and poverty. Andrew, he spoke with one of them who may be on the verge of breaking that cycle.